So citizens of Pyongyang are the elite to live in Pyongyang. You're chosen to live there. And as you can see, they're very loyal and patriotic. Now I'm really going to speed up. I'm running out of time. This is a propaganda van, very common sight on the streets in towns.
끝없는 심리 모략선으로 평화적인 건설에 만리하고 미 경제력을 끊임없이 약화시키며 우리의 진단지를 허물어 제2의 군동등을 일으키려는 것은 예수의 변할 수 없는.
So let's leave Pyongyang. It's actually a very beautiful country. The scenery is fantastic. And of course, most of it's pristine, unspoiled. When you leave Pyongyang, your accommodation isn't as flash as Pyongyang. You're not going to find a radio between your bed, and you sleep on the floor. I love this photograph here because one of the biggest problems when you're collecting data in the country is keeping your devices charged. And this photograph, it's just a fluke. You can actually see the power strip there. The light is on saying that I've got AC power. That must have been like the only minute of the whole 24 hours that there was AC power in that room. So that was always a challenge for me, keeping my devices charged when I was out of Pyongyang. Now, North Koreans will tell you how bad the Americans are, and due to their unfair sanctions, they have no petroleum or gasoline. So they've actually converted trucks to run on burning wood. So they're not like steam trucks. They actually burn the wood, produce gas, and then they have modified combustion engines which do that. Oh, I skipped through a bit fast there, but actually most of those trucks you don't see moving. You see more of them on the side of the road with the bonnet up and smoke pouring out the back. In 2011, I was actually detained in North Korea. It was my first scouting trip, and where I was using social engineering and trying to find out how far I could push the limits. This is a place called Paektusan, Mount Paektu. The photograph where I'm standing to take this photograph is in North Korea. The far side of the lake is in China. And I was left to my own devices. The minders said, well, you know, we're up here for about 2 hours. You're in the middle of nowhere on top of a volcano. Walk around, but don't go off the tracks. So, of course, I went off the tracks and soon found that it was like an ant's nest. There were entrances everywhere, and I saw soldiers going in and out of these entrances. I thought I was taking photographs of the entrances without being obvious and so on, but actually soon found a gun in my back and was marched down to this post here where they yelled at me in Korean for about 10 minutes and then deleted every photograph of my camera. The reason I've got the photographs is that North Koreans, they know how to delete photographs, but they're not that tech savvy actually. What they should have done is kept the SD card, because as soon as I got back to Australia, I simply got the deleted photographs back. So when you go to North Korean farms, they probably tell you that they can produce more food than we can in the West. In fact, at this farm, they're claiming they're receiving or producing 4 crops per year. When you pick up a piece of the dirt, there's no organic matter in there at all. It's just kind of clay. And you get very used to, well, the social engineering is, because really the methodology I used, or the method I used, was to learn a lot of North Korean propaganda and simply parrot it back to them. Because even the minders, the people that are with you, have no outside reference, it kind of like sarcasm or bullshitting someone doesn't really they don't kind of really understand that concept. They tend to believe what you say. So if you repeat back the propaganda they produce from their own country, they actually think that you are truly admiring their nation. And so after a while, this was on my third trip, you start to, after your first trip, which is kind of a scouting trip, you start to notice things aren't exactly as people say. So when you go to factories, and unlike that factory you did see machine workers making garments, usually you go to factories and nothing's happening. You can see all the machinery and you can see the end product, but you can't actually see anyone working. I went to this farm and they were very proud of this farm, but I couldn't find any farmers. And they tell you, oh, you should have come this morning because they were quite busy preparing the fields. When you're in North Korea, you hear these type of things, just look around. There's always something to prove that what they're saying is wrong. As you can see, these wagons here look like they've never moved from when they were parked there. There's no tracks on the ground at all. And yet they had told me that earlier in the morning, all of them were out in the fields. Here at the same farm are some of the probably, farmers, or so-called farmers walking by. As you can see, again, the roads don't show any movement of tractors or anything like that on them particularly. This here is a fertilizer factory, the largest fertilizer factory in North Korea, which is quite close to that farm. And when I found no organic material in the ground, I thought, well, far out, like there's a large fertilizer factory nearby. Was lucky enough to visit. The reason I'm showing you this fertilizer factory is that many people just believe it is a large fertilizer factory, but it's also rumoured to be one of the largest chemical weapons production sites in the world. There's also been some people believe that chemical weapons used in Syria were sourced from this area as well, maybe this very factory. So the reason you get shown these type of things, it's kind of like in the first Iraq War, being shown a baby milk factory. In some ways, it could be a fertilizer factory or it could be a military factory. As you can see, the imagery and the posters on the wall, usually military themes, but they're showing us that it's simply a fertilizer factory. Push bikes in North Korea have license plates, because of course that's the main mode of transport. Just really touching quickly on the gear, as I said, do some work in Australia, take devices in, really just taking in devices, hiding them, making them look like simple consumer items, an MP3 player and so on. The last two trips I did get a GPS in. GPSs are really forbidden. I got a GPS in on my iPhone. The last two trips I had my iPhone on me. They didn't actually confiscate it. And they felt that it was quite safe having an iPhone because you can't connect to the phone network easily. There's no internet, no Wi-Fi to connect to. And of course, the iPhone GPS isn't going to work without a network signal, is it? Well, how wrong can you be? All you've got to do is download the maps before you go into the country. You know exactly where you are. And I started the tracker running at the beginning every day and turned it off every night. And I've got breadcrumbs of everywhere I went through the whole country. And so correlating that to timestamps on photographs, I know exactly where every photograph I took was taken. So a lot of photographs are of transmission sites, things which they don't want you to photograph. I've got the exact coordinates of them and have been sharing those with people interested. Also, some guys were quite interested in understanding the local mobile phone network, so did some measurements of that as well. It's amazing when I do this talk, I've done this talk quite often, but when you meet these amazing people, and so one that actually, someone I'm helping right at the moment is that there's a North Korean defector in Sweden, and he's likely to be deported back to China because Sweden has decided that he's not from North Korea. He's actually a Chinese masquerading as North Korean. If he goes back to China, they'll immediately hand him back to North Korea and he'll end up in a camp. So I'm helping with this because this statue is actually in the hometown of this defector. And of course, he's got no papers to say he's North Korean. He actually was a street person. He's describing to his legal counsel his town, and I'm providing them photographs so they can correlate his story and descriptions. This is quite a remote town, and so the likelihood of him being able to describe it incredibly accurately would be quite slim unless he actually did live there. All right, now we get to the exciting part. I'm actually going to show the United States blown up by a nuclear weapon, so I'm warning you about that. I don't know if you've ever seen when Bill Clinton went in to rescue the two journalists a few years ago. He made sure that when he was standing next to Kim Jong-il, he never was seen as smiling in photographs, so I've used that method as well. So every photograph I have with a person with the regime, I deliberately avoid smiling. Here we are down right on the border in the DMZ, past the minefields, and there's an electric fence there. And this is looking at the front line, looking at the United Nations US outpost in South Korea from the northern side. Here's the actual electric fence and massive minefields around this. When we started, you heard about the large flag. This is what it looks like from inside North Korea. And there's tank traps down this part of the country. So this is the only road between South and North Korea, which is where the American tanks and American military vehicles would come up. They actually have wedges to be able to, with a small charge, make those cement blocks tumble down into the canyon to prevent any vehicles coming up. This is the DMZ. So you might have seen photographs of this before, but this is actually looking from North Korea into the south. And of course, the last few trips where I had an iPhone with me, I couldn't help but hide from my North Korean minders behind some pillars and send text messages to all my friends. So here's an American soldier on the other side, looking in and saying, "What the fuck are you doing?" As you can see, on the south side, there's South Korean Americans there. They take aggressive stance. They wear sunglasses. The North Koreans don't have sunglasses. And the hatred of Americans, or hatred or suspicion, I use the term hatred, but the suspicion of foreigners is bred into North Koreans at a very early age, right through the whole education system. There's a general poster on a wall which is saying don't play with landmines and so on. But one of the, using social engineering techniques, saying, "Oh gosh, I'm really busting and I need to go to the toilet," and if you've won the or built some relationship with your minders, sometimes they'll let you go without them following you, and then what you do is immediately go down corridors which you're not meant to go down. You can usually find the corridors you're not meant to go down because they have no lighting, they're dark. And if you go down those corridors, which is in a high school, you'll find his grandpa congratulating the kids because they've caught an American soldier. You can always pick an American because they've got a hooked nose. And here's a clueless American that's crashed his Jeep. And here's a poster saying, as students, study hard, and you can, with what you learn, you'll be able to slaughter Americans and Japanese. So this is all in a high school, down dark corridors, which isn't where my minders expected me to go. This poster was taken in Pyongyang. A minder was walking past this, and a minder pointed out to me something to the left. And when the minder points something out to you, make sure you look in every direction other than where they're pointing. What this poster says is, "Death to Americans and all that support them." This artwork here is, I actually have the original of, and this is what North Korean schoolgirls dream of: phallic symbol missiles and kind of North Korean Lego they build military apparatus with. So I've actually got that original hanging in Sydney. It's fantastic.